Hi, welcome to the Conversation Shop with Cedric Page. I'm here with my very, very special guest, Miss Kimberly Smith. Kimberly,
Hello.
welcome to the Conversation Shop. I'm
Thank
very
you for
happy
having
to
me.
have you today. I want to start by telling my audience I was inspired by a conversation that you and I were a part of that was on
Mhm.
Facebook, that a friend of ours put a post up, and just your
Yeah.
commentary led me to a space where I wanted to have a conversation about growing up as a biracial person
Yeah.
here in the Madison and surrounding areas. And I was inspired by this by a video called The Loving Generation. It basically
Mhm.
said the generation
Yeah.
of mid 30s to mid 40s was the loving generation, a generation that embraced loving all people, embraced love of all races, and where there was an influx
Mhm.
of biracial children, interracial
Yeah.
relationships,
Yep.
biracial children,
Yeah.
and how we embraced that. But what we weren't prepared for were the challenges that came from having children in those spaces, and I think it was a great thing. But having children in those spaces, and how do you raise a child, and how do you assist a child in their identity as a person? I call it your real identity, your
Mhm.
racial
Yeah.
identity in home, and then your
Yeah.
social identity.
Yeah.
So again, why don't you start by telling my
Take one.
audience a little bit about
Yeah.
yourself and what led you to having this conversation with me?
Ready to take two.
So, it's actually a very deep story. I don't know how much to delve into, but
Go ahead.
I was born in Madison,
Hmm.
to a white mother and a black father who was from Mississippi.
Oh,
He was
where
a
in
lot.
Mississippi?
Um, Fayette.
Oh,
Ready
I
one.
know
Take one.
Jackson.
Fayette well.
Take one.
Oh, wow, we got to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Ready to
I
take
know.
two.
So my father was much older than my mother. He was 47 when I was born. My mother was 22. So it was a different relationship. So I grew up in Madison for the first 8 years of my life. My mother had a stroke
Pretty heavy
at the
delay
age of
there.
31.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, yep. And I moved with my aunt and uncle to McFarland at the age of 8, and I spent 10 years there with them.
Okay.
And then after I was 18, I had gotten pregnant. I
Okay.
moved out, and I lived in Madison for, it was probably about 13, 14 years, and then I moved to Oregon. So I lived
Oh,
in the area.
wow.
Ready
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
A lot of
Take one.
diversity there, right?
Ready
Yeah,
to take
right.
two.
So I've been here all my life in Dane County, but I've moved around a little bit.
Okay.
Anything further you feel like you want to hear, or
Ready
No.
one.
is that
Take
kind of
one.
a good start?
No, I think that's a perfect start. Well,
Okay, sounds good.
what I wanted
Yeah.
to do was, just dive right into the conversation.
Yeah.
I wanted you to share with me a little bit about, your experiences growing up. The first part I wanted to ask you, which I'm very curious about, even with my
Ready
own
three.
children,
Take three.
which is,
Ready
when
one.
did you, as you were growing up, when did you realize
Take
there
one.
was a difference? When did you
Ready
realize that you didn't look like your mother, meaning that melanin, that
Take
little
two.
bit of melanin that's in your skin, that beautiful curly hair that you have? When
Yeah.
did you realize that you were different? And
Ready
when did
two.
you realize that you were a
Take two.
black person, African American person, whatever you self-identified with? Share that story with me.
That's a deep story. I'm not sure where to begin because I don't know.
Yeah, I want to take you way back. I
Thank you.
want you to take you
Yeah.
way back. When did you, when did
I
you
don't.
realize there was a
Ready two.
difference?
Take two.
I don't think that there was a moment that I ever realized that I was black. It was more about the realization that I was vastly different, in general.
So you didn't know
Ready one.
why
Take
you
one.
were different. You just realized you were different.
And
Take two.
because I think I just always knew that I was different, but I didn't know that there was a problem with it, or quote unquote a problem, or there was that it even mattered until my mother and my aunt were telling me that you are black, and I would say no, I'm white, just to make them angry. So there was this discussion as a young girl, probably about 4 or 5 years old, and it was out of anger towards them.
Hmm.
And I had biracial cousins as well. So my aunt had biracial children.
Okay.
And that's when I began to notice that the white and black mattered, mattered to me. It was
And when you say
whatever.
matter, when
Yeah.
you say matter, tell me, what do you mean when it says matter? When you say matter, do you say that it was a problem that you were
He-
black?
Ready to take two.
People treated me differently.
People
Yeah.
treated you differently because you were black. Now
Correct.
let's hold that thought real quickly. Let me
Yeah.
ask you
Take
another
one.
quick question.
Ready three.
Now, in terms of your father or the household you were
Take
in,
three.
Yeah.
did you have any African American men around you
Ready.
when you were younger to help you in your identification as
Ready,
a
one, take
young
one.
black woman?
Ready two. Take two.
Only in passing. My father wasn't there. There was a large age gap between my father and my mother. My father was 47 when I was born. My mother was 22. He had many other children before me. He lived with another woman. So he and I were separated,
Okay, got you.
and we reconciled years later. But so the men that were around me were my
Ready,
mother's boyfriends, the black men, who would come into my life,
Take one.
and my aunt's spouse. So
Ready,
it was
two.
merely in passing.
Okay.
I feel like there wasn't a strong
two.
parental figure in my life that was a black man in my life. So no.
Okay. And the woman that you related to,
Yeah.
because I've heard this with my daughter
Ready,
as
one,
well, was your mother, who happened to
Yes.
be a white woman. So I'll share the story
Yes.
with my daughter. My daughter,
Ready three.
would say this, would necessarily say similar things, but she would struggle with the concept of me saying that she was a black woman when she was younger. And she would, and I would have to explain to
Take
her
three.
that, we're not denying or excluding your mother.
And
And I explained to her that I hate that you have two separate identities here in the United States. But I had to explain to her and my son from a young age that you actually have a duality here, and this is what your duality is. Your real identity is, yes, you are a biracial, multiracial person here in America.
Ready three.
I'm your father, I'm black, your mother, she's white. As you grow and as you go to school and as you interact with people,
Ready one.
you're
Take
going to
one.
run into some people that will have a problem with you because of your color of your skin or the fact that you're
Ready two.
black.
Take two.
Well, Dad, my skin isn't black.
Ready one.
I don't look, what do you mean black?
Take one.
Well, blackness, quite frankly, is a state of mind and it serves a social purpose. It's truly and only based on melanin in your skin. I said the social purpose, as you get older, I'll be able to explain to you why you are dealing with some of the things that you're dealing with. It may not be fair, but this is life. So again, that was the conversation I had to have with my daughter, and what I always tried to do as a father was speak to her and explain to her what what she was going to experience, but I always tried to have her around
Take three.
other people or people of color, children of color, black girls, to give her balance with what she was seeing at home with her family. Would you like to speak to that a little bit and share any similar experiences of yours in that space?
Yeah, listening to you actually made me a little bit sad because I never had that father figure there to tell me those things. I really had to muddle through all of it by myself.
Okay. Yes.
So your daughter's very lucky to have you there, and
I have to ask you
go ahead,
this
I'm sorry.
question. How do you navigate that? See, that's what I worry about. How do you navigate in the midst of being a young person, trying to identify and figure out who you are anyway, outside of adding the fact that, okay, I'm in this space and I'm dealing with being a melanated person, a black person, and how am I going to navigate this? Because the stuff I'm dealing with, I don't think is fair. Because that's what my daughter and my son would say. This isn't fair.
It's not. So my way of navigating it, you look at me and people are like, sometimes like, I don't even think of you as black. I hear about that a lot. And I say, that's disappointing. So I had to navigate my way through a white world. I lived up, in a very white town. So oftentimes it was a white view of who I was or who they thought I was.
Got you.
So it wasn't until I moved out, hit 18, moved out, and that began my true journey about who I was as a Black woman.
I want you to hold that thought. We're going to explore
Okay.
that. We're going to
Perfect.
explore that on our second segment. But real quickly before we go into our break, I just want to ask you, as you were navigating and having these experiences, and again, I don't look at you as a Black person. How did that make you feel? Because it's almost like, okay, if you see me as a Black person, is that bad? So how do you navigate?
Right.
It's almost implying that you should act more white. You should try to emulate whiteness more. You should try to be like us so you're not like them. And then when you go home, how do you internalize that? Was that something you navigated? And would you mind sharing with me for like a quick second here? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, sure. I've taken, unfortunately, over the years, I had taken a back seat to responding. I just didn't know how to respond.
Mm-hmm.
That's frustrating. I didn't have my voice. And now I have my voice. I don't have a problem speaking out. So when I was younger, I wouldn't say much of anything. But now, I say, I'm either a Black woman or I'm biracial, and there's pride in that. There's a sense of being okay finally with who I am,
Right.
which is very freeing, where I wasn't free before. And I'm still, at 38, I'm still trying to achieve that. That story isn't
That's not
done.
bad.
It's not over. No, it's not.
That's not bad at all. We navigate that a lot, and I'm really happy that you shared that with me, because, for instance, like I was having a conversation with my son, and the conversation I was having with my son, I said, you may be in a group of friends, right, in Marshville, and they may be joking and cracking jokes. I said, when they make a racial joke about a Black person, Jaden, I said, you have to understand. He's like, well, Dad, it's true. I said, what makes it true? Because it's a stereotype, or because your friends tell you it's true, or because you're trying to be cool? What I said to him, I said, what you have to understand is when they make that joke, the joke is actually on you. You're the butt of the joke, and you need to realize that, and you have to understand that you have a responsibility to not only stand up for yourself as a person of color, but for anyone else that comes behind you. So I had to explain that to him, and he finally understood and got it, because I said to him, I said, do you see me running around with chicken and watermelon? You think that's funny? I said, I said, ask yourself, would I be upset if they said it to me, or would they say it in front of someone else?
Yeah.
I said, because if they wouldn't, then they shouldn't be saying it.
Correct.
But again, we're going to go into you leaving your home and coming into finding yourself as a Black woman when we come back from the next segment. We'll be right back on The Conversation Shop. Hi, welcome back to The Conversation Shop with Cedric Page. I'm here with my very special guest, Miss Kimberly Smith. Kimberly, welcome. And thank you for having this conversation with me about growing up in Madison as a biracial woman in the loving generation. Now, in the first segment, we were talking about, coming to the realization that you were different, that the melanin in your skin, you being a woman of color, was a problem not for you, it sounds like, when you were younger, but was a problem for other people, and navigating that negativity and maybe not even understanding what caused it and trying to figure out who you were in the midst of that. So as we go into this segment, I want you to elaborate on how you navigated that, good or bad, how you navigated that, and then take me into you leaving home and coming into the realization of yourself as an African-American woman.
Yeah. Okay, so, my youth, I spent the first part in Madison and then the second part in McFarland. And I think it was the time spent in McFarland which probably imprinted the most on me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a primarily all-white town. There were a few families of color,
Mm-hmm.
but I was one of the only black females
Okay.
in the school. There was one other, and she was actually Hispanic, I believe. Their family was from either, I think, Nicaragua.
Okay.
So she had a whole entire, she had family support.
Okay.
I did not. I had cousins, but they were white,
Okay.
and they didn't know how to relate to me. I came in there at 8 years old, kind of stole their bedrooms, and I don't know if I clarified, but my mother had a stroke.
Yes, you did.
Okay, my father, was living separately, and so I moved in with my aunt and my uncle, and that's why I moved to McFarland.
Now hold that thought real quickly.
Yeah.
You said about when you moved into the house with your aunt in McFarland, and you had cousins that didn't really know how to navigate or understand you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but talk to me about that a little bit, because that must have been really, really hard for you coming into your family's home and still navigating the fact of your melanin and being a black woman in your family's house. How did that make you feel? Did you feel alienated, or did you feel part of the pack? How did that make you feel?
Isolated. I think my experiences with my family and living in McFarland makes me so angry, has made me angry, and it's coming out now. I think for many, many years I was depressed, a lot of depression and anxiety. And so I find that I'm manifesting that now in who I am now, because it had been shoved down for so long.
Now go into detail with me. Share some of that with me. What caused this?
What caused that? Not necessarily with my family, but feeling ugly, not feeling, out of place with the way that I talked. I talked differently. The way that I had short little curl boy cut, so that was kind of, ostracizing too, because I looked like a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt, who was a white woman, not my mother, she didn't know how to relate to my hair, so she was telling me didn't know how to do my hair, so my hair was like out of control. It's taken me almost 30 years to figure that out.
Typical biracial kid. I'm sorry, that's still a problem to this day.
Sure. So it was in those daily moments, whether it was hair or skin or clothes, it was my family wasn't outright hostile towards me, but it was maybe their lack of, they had a certain way of ostracizing me without really knowing that they were doing so.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
So when you say ostracizing,
Mm-hmm.
did you, for lack of a better term, feel like you were the family secret, the mistake?
No, more of a black sheep.
Black
if
sheep.
you will.
Gotcha.
Little, yes, a little black sheep.
But not because of you, but because of something
who they thought I was.
Something your mother did, and who your mother was with.
Yes, I guess in a way.
Because it's a reflection on when you're coming into a household with your parents. You're a child.
Yes.
You're still learning. You don't have a who you are. When you shared with me, you talked a certain way. You only talk a certain way based upon the people that you were around.
Correct.
So you pick that up from the people that you're around. And when it comes to hair, what you reference is what I see and what I've experienced personally myself, which is a misunderstanding of culture. See, when you come into, from my experience, when I've came into communities where there weren't very many African Americans, people base their opinions of people that look like us on what they see on television, what they hear in music, what they stereotypes, and then as you're navigating who you are, okay, who do I embrace? Do I embrace the negativity? Because why is it that everything that's negative you want to attach to blackness or to black people?
Yes.
Right?
And that happened a lot to me as a child. I was always thought of as the bad one, or somebody who didn't have, good morals or ethics, or I was always the one who they thought would steal or
Go
behave
into
in a
that
certain
with
way.
me.
I was a scapegoat. Yeah, so it's hard to pick out a specific situation, but being in, with a group of friends, if anything went wrong or if there was a bad influence, somebody was getting in trouble,
It was
I
you.
was always I was always the first when it wasn't necessarily always true. Did
Right.
I get in trouble? Yeah,
Yeah.
I got in trouble, but it wasn't always me, and I wasn't
It was the
always the
black girl.
influence. Right.
Right.
It's easy to point a finger, at a minority to put the blame on them because, the white girls, they don't ever make mistakes and they don't ever get in trouble. I had to live with being compared to people who didn't act and look like me, and so that
So your idea
makes
of
you
beauty, your idea of
it
beauty, you don't
was
see a
really
beautiful,
jacked up.
right?
Yeah,
Because
I
you're
didn't.
looking at your aunt who's a white woman. You look nothing
Yes,
like her,
I
and
still struggle
who do
with
you
that to this
attach
day.
with? Attach to?
Yes, I struggle with that. I still look in the mirror and think,
Well,
that I'm not
you're a
beautiful.
beautiful black woman, and I will share with you, embrace all of the features that make you this beautiful
Yeah,
black woman because they're
yeah,
all the things that make you special and make you who you are, and they're all the things that other people try to emulate and go pay to get.
yes. The
You have
lips, the
all of
hair.
this. You have all
You know,
of this.
Yeah, I could tell you a really quick story about my hair. So for years and years and years, my hair was very stringy, dry, and I didn't know how to work with my hair.
Hmm.
And it's just been over the last 5 to 7 years that I realized I can't do what white women do. I can't wash my hair every day. I can't blow dry my hair. These are things that I learned up growing up in a white home in a white culture. My hair didn't want to be constantly poked and prodded.
Guess who went through
It,
that?
it
Guess who?
just your daughter,
Guess who goes through
for
that
sure.
now? Okay,
I'm
I'm
sure.
gonna share this with you. Go
Yes,
to the library and get this book called Curly Girl.
I have it. I've read it.
Okay, so you already
Yes,
know.
I
That's
know.
what
So I
saved my
let my hair
daughter's hair.
be. Yes,
That's what
oils
saved
are
my daughter's
fun.
hair. Yes. So I'm
You
trying to
don't
do the
wash it
same
every
with my
day.
son. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes. I had to learn that. I didn't have anybody there to teach me that. Nobody knew. So I've had to. I feel like I'm 20 years behind most black, biracial, multicultural people because the world that I grew up in for the first 20 years of my life was Caucasian, was white.
But
And
I
yeah,
gotta comment on this real quick. I
yeah,
apologize. But when you
that's
say
fine.
that, I just want to add that it's 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 all the journey in you. As I hear you say it, it's all the journey in you becoming who you are now.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
when I hear that, I have to. It makes me think of my daughter. So when
Hmm.
I hear that, and I say this from a very loving place, that
Yeah.
embracing that whole 18, 20, 15 years, with
Hmm.
that side of your family, embrace that with love because one thing I'll say, there's no perfection. Um, some people don't know. My ex right now still doesn't know how to manage my son's hair. She doesn't understand that he needs a haircut every week, every other week. They
Yep.
don't
Yeah.
understand that frizzy and wild is not it.
Yes. No.
That you have to, there's a
Yeah.
process to grooming.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
when you're growing up, right? And share
Yes.
this with me, like with my son, you'll hear, well, and what I've heard in certain households.
Yeah.
Well, racism doesn't exist. You're here. Why are you acting? Why are you acting defensive? But everything about your experience
Mhm. Mhm.
validates it. So
Mhm.
what I want to say to you,
Yeah.
Ms. Kimberly Smith, is that your experience is real. Your
Yeah.
experience is
Yes.
validated. You're not
Thank you.
crazy. Everything that you went through was
Thank you.
factual.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
it's the other people, and I share this from going through different things in my life with family members. As long as you understand that and you have that
Yeah.
realization, it's up to them to
Yeah.
own it. Sometimes
Yes.
people in your family don't want to give you that closure or that clarification because
Yeah.
what does it say about them? And most
Yeah.
people don't want to realize or admit that they've had biases and that
Yes.
they have
Yes.
pieces of them that kind of float into racist spaces,
Yes.
whether it's a
Mm.
family member or not. So
Yes. But
again,
listen.
I validate you in your experience.
Thank you.
I validate you in your walk, and you are a strong Black biracial woman, and your
Thank
18
you.
years doesn't devalue that. So
Thank
as
you.
a friend, don't say that.
All right. No, I need to hear that. There is nothing more valuable to me, I think, when we have our relationships together in the Black community than to feel validated. Because,
Thank you.
especially when you're surrounded by the white community who is telling you that, no, these things don't exist. Everything's fair across the board. And you're like insane. And your anger rages and there's no outlet for
We're
it
going to
until
talk
you
about
hear
that.
from another person that, yes,
Let's
you
talk
are
about that on our next segment. We're going to go
true.
right into that. I'm going to
Okay.
let you take the floor with
Okay.
that on the next segment. We'll be right back on the Conversation Shop. Hi, welcome back to the Conversation Shop with Cedric Page. I'm here with my very special guest, Ms. Kimberly Smith. And Kimberly, we're going to dive right back into the conversation. We were on the last segment, we were talking about validation and how you suggested that biracial children are searching for validation. And it sounds like validation in the home, validation with family members, validation in the community. Now, what I have to ask a question, do you think that validation is a result of maybe not having that strong African American or Black role model, whether it's a Black woman, Black man around you to give you that balance? Because it sounded like you didn't have a lot of balance. It sounded like it was swayed 100% to the one side, and everything that you heard about the right side was negative, so you took it as truth. So again, just dive right in, talk to me about validation, and I want to go back to segment 2 again. I want you to talk to me about validation, but again, I want you to go into talking to me about when you left home and when you came into your realization of you being a Black woman.
Okay, so the validation absolutely stems from not having a strong connection for somebody who's biracial, living in the white world, the absence of having that connection with other people in the Black community. And that might just be another Black friend or another Black or biracial friend.
Gotcha.
I didn't have that at all. So even if it's just one person in your age, a little older, doesn't matter, a little younger, and you're having these conversations that as 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, whatever, come together, and you realize that there is truth to this experience that you're having, and that experience isn't necessarily right. It's not correct. There's something wrong with that situation. That's really important, and I think that's important for biracial children to have, especially.
Yes.
Especially. Because and even children who are Black, who are in households with parents who are not the same race as they are.
Let me share this with you real quickly.
Go ahead.
Kimberly. My children are growing up in a household where their mother is white and their stepfather's white, and their other 2 siblings are white.
Yep.
Okay.
They have each other.
Okay.
Which
so
is
they
fantastic.
I raised them to validate each other, but also raised them to validate their brothers and sisters. But I also, in the midst, again, remember I talked about their duality. I always teach them how to navigate their duality, but one of the main things that I teach my children is confidence and knowledge of self. So if I'm giving them knowledge of self, so I tell my daughter every day, I call her my beautiful baby girl. I tell her she's beautiful. I tell her all the different things that push her forward. I tell her that she's smart. I tell her that I talk to her about her friends. I talk to her about some of the things she may hear, some of the things that she may navigate even though I'm not a woman, but just from a social standpoint as a woman of color, and how to be strong in the middle of that. Now, my son, on the other hand, is navigating things from a different space. So I have to teach him about strength of who he is. Doesn't mean strength of negativity. You ain't got to go around and be the boy in the rap music video wanting to fight in Super Thug, which I don't want him to be. But at the same time,
Yeah.
you know, give respect but demand respect. And I teach him that.
Because they will take it from you. They will try to take it from you at any,
Exactly.
Constantly.
And how do I teach him how to be strong as a person of color? By giving him the tools to navigate that. So I teach him his history. I teach him where he came from. He sees me put a tie suit on every day going to work. He's validated in who his father is. He knows where he comes from. So when he goes out, and I remind him of those things, so when he goes out and he navigates the world, he can navigate it from a space of confidence. And I tell my son all the time, he's my best friend. And he is my best friend because, you know, I love him with everything in me, and I want to see him push forward and navigate the world from a good place, but and not be bitter growing up in a town such as Marshfield with limited minorities from his experiences. And I pray that those experiences are positive. But go ahead and finish. I'm gonna let you take me into the next segment with telling me your story and then touching on that.
Yes, the bitterness. I think that's a very good step to this conversation, because I find myself being very bitter. You know, leaving McFarland and having having a child young at 18 and being basically kind of abandoned. You know, my mother had a stroke, so she was incapacitated, couldn't really mother me. My father was, by the time that I had my daughter, he was in his 60s. He wasn't going to be, he ended up being a really great grandfather. He was like a father to my daughter. And I'm grateful that we eventually were able to connect. And so very grateful. So from my 18, 19, 20 until I was, till now, I'm 39, it's been this metamorphosis, I guess, of discovering what exactly my blackness and owning it, and not just letting other people figure out or tell me what it means to them versus trying to figure out what it means to me, who I am. And that's been a struggle, but I'm getting there. It's been a struggle.
And tell me this. I know you're sharing with me it's a struggle, but I have to hear you say this out loud. What's your definition of being a blackness, of being a black woman? What is that? You're sharing that you're navigating it, but share with me how you feel or what you feel that is.
Right. So, growing up, everything that was black about me was kind of stuffed down, whether it was the hair, the lips, the nose, my physical appearance, my voice, the way my behaviors. I have different behaviors, or I did have different behaviors. And so those things they tried to muffle that or stifle that. And that now it's my goal to just accept who I am, whether it's my hair, it's my body. My body is different. My skin is different, even though it's very fair. Treating my body with respect, knowing that because
curves are good.
Curves are good. Yes. And in this culture, we dehumanize black bodies.
Yes, Hottentot Woman. Go look that story up, the Hottentot Woman. It tells you about what they're doing with black women. But go ahead, sweetheart.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Don't get me started. So accepting that, and this is such a deep topic. I could go on for days. So I'm sorry.
Go
this
ahead.
is so short.
Go ahead.
Owning my sexuality as a black woman, who I am, and that doesn't always get talked about.
Talk to me about that. Go into detail. Talk about that.
Being in a white town, you also deal with intimate partner relationships with people who.
But did they think you were promiscuous?
Yes, quite possibly, yes. But people who look different than you, and navigating that as well, whether it was white men or Hispanic men, their perspective on black women is different than the perspective a black man would have about a black woman, and navigating that. Where was I going with this? Respecting my body. Because as a black woman, people think that they can put their hands on you. And I think that whether it's your hair or, looking at your skin, whatever it is, we in this culture, we don't give autonomy to black women. It's like as if anybody has
They're
control.
objects. We
They're
objectify them.
objects. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
And so bringing that back in and owning that, or not owning that, but battling that has been very tough. People's preconceived notions about who I am in intimate relationships, that has been a struggle, and dealing with that, it's hard to get deeper into that one, but so I'm totally losing my train of thought here, so bring me back.
No worries, no worries. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
As you're growing up in the communities like Oregon or McFarland, back when you were growing up, how do you navigate, what your view of an attractive black man is? How do you navigate, are you afraid of black men?
No.
I mean, when I
No.
say that, as you're growing up, if you're not afraid of them, are you attaching negatives to them? Are you bringing any baggage from your lack of, or whatever you have from not having a dad there when you were younger? Is that being placed upon their lap? Are you projecting that? Talk to me a little bit about how did you navigate that?
So, definitely not a fear of black men. We actually had this conversation a few months ago with my friend. She asked me, so if a white man came to your door in a certain amount of clothing, and a Hispanic man came to the door in a certain clothing, dressed a certain way, and a black man did too, who would you be more scared of? And I said, now I would be more scared of the white man, because it depends on your interactions with people. It depends on, the realization that a white man has more power over me than a Hispanic man or a black man would, and especially if he's a police officer. So, and growing up as well, there was no fear there.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying, because what I just heard you say, and I apologize, was attaching, which is a very real thing, but you are attaching power to whiteness.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
A lot of, it's coming out that you were taught this inadvertently to attach power and to submit yourself, it suggests subconsciously, to whiteness. And from speaking with you, it suggests to me that that's where some of your anger comes from, because you had to suppress who you were as a woman of color.
Yes.
You were made to feel like you had to suppress who you were as a woman of color because of this power that you were attached to whiteness.
So all my relationships, this thought popped in my head. All my relationships as a young person were mostly with white people. Mm-hmm. So at most times they were always, they weren't oppressive per se, but they were always had something over me. I was always in a submissive, or I don't know what the right word is, a lower position that they
subjugated.
were. So that subjugated. Thank you. Yes, thank you for being my dictionary, because I needed that. But yeah, subjugated. That was my relationship with white people for so long, where now I'm really finding my voice, and it's coming out more that I'm not going to tolerate this unequal relationship, because you don't have power over me because of your whiteness.
Now let me ask you this: when you say, when we talk about power, now when you're around your friends, and we go quote unquote white friends, is the language that they're using disrespectful, derogatory, or negative as it relates to your blackness and you being a black woman? Or have you navigated positive conversations and representations of your blackness in those same situations?
So I think in the past they were more negative, but I think most of my white friends are, it's almost like most of my life has spent more so not negative, not positive, but apathetic relationships. Mm-hmm. Apathetic is the best word I can come up with, where it was neither here nor there. It wasn't even talked about per se. Where younger relationships, more negative, but now it's more either apathetic or more positive. I'm slowly having conversations with my friends about race, about the men coming to the door, who would you be more fearful of, kind of thing. Okay. So we're having this conversation. It's more positive. It's more introspective and really digging into what white supremacy is, what white privilege looks like, yes. What racism looks like. So the conversations now are more deep, more thoughtful, versus as a young person, I feel like the relationships and the conversations were more superficial.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Well, they're more concerned about you. They want to get to know you as a woman of color.
Yeah.
And it sounded like, as you said, they're more real interactions than surface interactions. So share with me before we go into our next segment real quickly, if you had to give any advice to a young biracial woman, a young girl navigating this, what advice would you give her prior to going into the next segment?
Oh gosh. You're okay. The way that you are, who you are, it is just right. There's nothing wrong about you. There's nothing bad about you, even though you may hear people speak about the way that you look, the way that you talk, the way that your thought process is. You are you, and that's okay. That. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I don't want to be too cheesy with that.
No,
but
be cheesy. Your lips, your nose, your hair,
everything.
Your eyes,
you're okay,
your butt, everything about you is beautiful.
You don't need to change it. Don't change it. Just be exactly who you are and discover who you are in this life process, and that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We'll be right back on The Conversation Shop. Welcome back to The Conversation Shop with Cedric Page. I'm here with my very special guest, Miss Kimberly Smith. And
Hello.
Kimberly, we're going to dive right back into this conversation. Yeah. During the break, you and I were having a conversation about, the suggestion from the mainstream, a Caucasian, whomever, to suggest that racism, discrimination is in our minds. And it doesn't exist. How angry.
If you look for it, you will find it.
Right.
And if you don't look for it, you won't find it.
Exactly.
Sorry.
If you look for it, you'll find it. And to me, when people say that to me, it's a ploy against your intelligence. It almost, to be honest with you, it upsets me. Because, as an intelligent person, when someone says that, it suggests to me that they're not willing to be honest with themselves. Yes. And one thing I'll share with you, when you confront someone with the truth, when someone goes to making a lot of excuses, it means you probably have them pegged just right.
Yes.
Yes. And my motto, and you heard me say this on the conversation we had, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quack, quack, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. It's not a chicken. Right? No. So some of the things that upsets me when I have conversations with people who try to suggest that it's in your head. This is what I'll say, Ms. Smith. Racism, right? Do I feel that as people of color, we're at times get overcome with thinking about racism? Yes, we can't navigate our lives as handicapped by racism and discrimination, regardless of whether it's real or not. We have to push forward and create for ourselves. But that doesn't mean that these systemic things and these institutionalized things and the things we navigate on a daily basis aren't real. They're real. We see them in the news every day. And one of the things that upsets me is when intelligent people can see these things and they will turn around and look you in your face and say, oh, he's not racist. Oh, what do you mean? It's just your perspective, the way that you're looking at it. When someone tells you that, they're lying to you, and you have to receive it as such, call it duck a duck, and you have to ask yourself whether you want to participate or not. And I'll share with you, Kimberly, I don't participate in conversations with people that just want to be right. I just tell them, you know what, you're right. Let me move on to someone that's willing to have an intellectual conversation, that's willing to grow.
Yes. That's what I need to learn. I need to learn to move on and have those conversations with people who want to learn, who want to grow. Because I get frustrated with when I'm met with that dishonest person who's lying to me, and it makes me angry, and they use other Black voices against me, and
Give me
I
some
have to catch
examples of
myself.
that. Talk to me about that anger. Give me some of the examples
Oh,
of those
I
Black
could go,
voices. So how can they use Black voices against you? That's funny to me.
I know. So the interaction that I'm referring to, but it has happened quite a bit. It happens often. Is well, I've got a couple of Black friends, and they don't believe in racism and white supremacy and white privilege. So you should probably just overlook it. I mean,
But
it's
Kimberly,
basically
think
what they're
about
saying.
that's
I know,
old, Kim. That's when you hear that, you're supposed to
but
laugh
it
because
still
guess what?
enrages me.
I have a couple Black friends. Do you hear me? My
I
couple of
know.
Black friends said, and Kimberly, go back
Yes,
to, I call it sitting on the perch. And this is
yes.
what I mean.
That's
Isn't
a
it?
great
Oh,
term.
you
Yeah,
guys would be so much better if you acted like me, if you picked yourselves up by the bootstraps and you did
yes,
these things, right? Because it's
yes,
all in your head. But what they're
yes,
not telling you is that when the race started, they had a 5-yard or 10-yard start, and
yes.
you were knocked back 5 steps, right?
And they
Then
refuse to admit that. They
because if they admitted Miss Smith, then what does it say about them? And see,
right.
a lot of people want to live in the dream world of saying that, hey, I accomplished and I did all of this on my
Yeah.
own, and what it comes down to is someone saying that I'm better than you. That's
Yes.
what it comes down to,
Yes.
and no one is better than anyone. God created us
Correct.
all equal, and quite frankly, when the dust settles, Kimberly, we're all brothers and sisters. We all come from the
Yes.
same space
Yes.
with just different shades of melanin. But again, you have
Yes.
some people, and I call them very insecure people. You have
Yes.
insecure people who
Yes.
claim to differences, who claims to things to build them up. So when someone comes at me in those spaces of racism, negativity, or playing with my intellect, I just turn the mirror back at them and their
Yes.
own reflection. And my main comment is, if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, then we can't have a conversation until you are.
Yeah.
So
I need
again,
to take your wisdom and roll with that. I need your wisdom.
but
On that
again, I
one.
want to
Yeah.
leave the last part of this segment,
Yeah.
Kimberly, with you, just talking about some of the anger. What you felt in the conversation that we were a part of, on Facebook, that
Yeah.
suggested that how you were feeling was wrong, and that the experiences that you've had, it was almost like suggesting that your experiences weren't real. And I can
Yeah.
understand exactly where
Yeah.
your anger came from, because it was nullifying your life and your experiences because
Yes.
it made them. But what I want you to know is because it
Yes.
made them uncomfortable. Never
Yes.
apologize for that.
Yes.
But go ahead. I'm
Yes.
going to let you finish sharing
Okay.
with me. Again, I want to go back to your realization of you being a Black woman. Take us into that in the show with
Yeah.
that. I want you to talk about some of the lessons that you've learned, as a biracial woman coming into your enlightenment and your growth.
Okay. Okay.
And then leave me with something extra for the young women out here that are navigating, that may be like you, that are in these small towns, that are trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
Please give them something to hold on to.
So, in terms of navigation and coming into my own, as a Black woman, biracial woman, one of the things that I've had to do is deprogram myself from white supremacy, of that type of mindset that denies that racism exists, because I once didn't, not as I thought that, but I was apathetic to it myself.
Okay.
And so recognizing the
brainwashed.
pain, brainwashing, I had to unbrainwash myself, and I have to catch myself. Even now, I'll catch myself thinking, along the lines of something that is in line with white supremacy and racism, not in a harsh way, but that mindset. I literally have to hit myself, no, Kim, that is part of this narrative that we've been told for a couple of 100 years, and that's not necessarily true. Or, I need to correct my behavior. If I want the world to be without racism, without prejudice, I need to be as such.
Thank
And that's
you.
not
I love that.
it's not
I love you said
easy.
that.
it's not easy, and I have to give that full disclosure, and I have to hold myself accountable to that, to deprogramming myself. And part of that is reading more books written by Black people, by minorities. Michelle Alexander, her book, The New Jim Crow, Mass
Yes.
Incarceration. Yep.
Yes.
That book changed my life and the way that I think about relations and the justice system in this country.
Yes.
Totally mind-opening. I mean,
But it's
if
real, but it started right after slavery.
yes, it is just another way to oppress, enslave, and to keep the Black community down. And it needs to be acknowledged. And if I was going to leave biracial and Black women with anything, it would be to read and educate yourself as much as you possibly can, so that you can better yourself, educate yourself, and then educate others. I'm still in that process. I can't say, that I know everything or that I have experienced everything. That would be a lie, a complete lie. But I'm always going to try to do better. I'm always going to try to do better for the community. Anything less is unacceptable. I'm always going to try. I'm never going to, I no longer want to be apathetic. That is unacceptable to me.
I love that. Now, and real quickly, I just want to leave you with a last clarification, because I think I cut you off on the last segment when you were giving me your definition of what a Black woman and Blackness is. So I want you to take me into the last minute with your definition of that.
I think, our Blackness has been taken away from us in a way, from the beginning, and continues to be taken away because there's something special there. There's something special there. And people see that, and they try to suppress it. They try to suppress whether it's the way that we look or who it is, Black girl magic, that Black girl magic. They try to suppress. I think of Serena. I think Serena Williams is just incredible.
Yes,
and you see people trying to suppress who she is. And I think knowing your Blackness, finding your Blackness, or is battling that. It's battling that. It's shooting down all the naysayers and people who devalue you and tell you that what you are doesn't matter. It's accepting who you are, knowing that you matter, and exuding that to the world, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. There's nothing. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that's a great message, and I want to leave my audience with that message right there. Ms. Smith, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Conversation Shop. I want to thank you for your openness and your honesty about your experience and your advice for all the young girls and biracial boys and girls out here that may be experiencing some of the things that you grew up experiencing. And I'm sure your words will be taken in a very positive way.
Yeah, and thank you for the validation. That just makes my lifetime. I think that's so important. So important. So I thank you so much for that.
True, came from the heart. Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining me on the Conversation Shop. I want to thank Ms. Kimberly Smith for being my guest, and we'll see you next time.